Anyways, I've got to be frank with you. I hope you're not surprised with this. But this is my first time as the main guest speaker in front of, I would say, a medium-sized audience. So I hope this is the first of many, because previously I've only been doing this competitively, and I really do hope that it will all go well. Anyways, let's move on to the main topic in here. Why does public speaking matters? Why does it actually matter? Why do I even have to learn about public speaking? I mean, I have the right, the choice to just say no and pass on this opportunity to not actually want to speak in front of a large audience like this, right? Public speaking is a choice as well, obviously, but it is a skill, a fundamental skill everyone needs in life. Let's start from the very basics first, right? The human voice. It is the single instrument which we all can play and can control. The human voice, it is very powerful, powerful enough to declare a war, but also to say the 3 words, I love you. Now, maybe you might be thinking about your crush right now in your brain, and really, ironically speaking, it is easier to say something controversial, which could start a war perhaps, like World War III, than to actually confess your love to your crush. So maybe, if that is one of you in here, then this is all for you. Anyways, John F. Kennedy once said, the only reason to give a speech is to change the world. And the only way by doing that is by speaking up. And if you can speak up, then you can influence a lot of people. When you can influence a lot of people, you can start to change lives. How cool is that? Obviously, the only reason why people want to go up and on stage to give a speech, let's say, is when they have something really important to say, that they want other people to notice as well, that they want other people to believe in as well. And that's why public speaking is very, very fundamental in our lives. It's used in nearly every single workplace where you go to, and it's a skill which a lot of companies are looking for, but we're not talking about, hey, we're learning about public speaking because we want to get into a large business. We want public speaking because it's a way for us to actually be our own leaders. The only way you are able to become a leader is not by asking other people to believe in you. It's by making other people believe in themselves. So that's the main thing about public speaking to me. It's not about making other people believe in you, but it's about making other people believe in themselves. And by doing that, you, in and of itself, become a leader, not just for yourself, but for other people as well. Anyways, next slide, please. All right, maybe some of you in here might not know the word glossophobia. Glossophobia is the fear of public speaking, basically speech anxiety. And I'm very sure that all of us in here has this phobia as well. It's something which we all share. Maybe you might say to yourself that, hey, I don't feel anxious whenever I come up on stage. I mean, I must be honest, frankly, quite frankly, I'm anxious right now. But maybe you don't see it, because I don't focus the fear on myself. More or less, fear is not a flaw. Fear is just misplaced focus. It's normal to feel frightened when you come up on stage. It is normal to feel frightened when we want to do something which has a lot of stake, right? But in and of itself, it is something normal. It is something that we all should embrace. The problem is, how do we focus on this fear? Do we focus the fear upon ourselves? Are we afraid of being judged by other people? Or are we frightened about how other people might think of us? No. The only way to do this is to focus the fear not on ourselves, but towards the audience. That when you're on stage, you're not talking about yourself. When you're public speaking, it's not about you. It's about the message you deliver. So, there are 3 root causes of glossophobia, which I have listed over here. I've got to be frank, once again. The whole night previously, I was indulging myself, binge watching not just movies about public speaking, and quite frankly, I can't find much, but I was watching a lot of TEDx speeches. And from those TEDx speeches, I could actually trickle it down to the 3 main things which causes glossophobia. So, the 3 root causes. The first one is the fear of judgment. Let's move on to the next slide. Right, the fear of judgment. We constantly think about how other people think about us, about how other people perceive us. I've mentioned this before. This fear makes us self-conscious and hyper-aware about what we do, about what we say. So instead of your brain thinking just once or twice before saying something, it goes through thinking like 3, 4, 5, 6 times before you say something, and it comes out to be wrong. It comes out to be, usually there's a phrase, right, for this situation. It is that when you say something, then you tell to yourself that, hey, that doesn't sound right like what it did in my brain. And that's basically the hyper-awareness of your own body, because quite frankly speaking, your body is actually perceiving everything around you so much more than your brain itself, more than your eyes can see. So when you're fearful, right, when you're frightened in front of a lot of audience, let's say, when you're super hyper-aware of what you say, that's when you feel the pressure to become perfect. And that leads to the second thing, which leads to glossophobia. So when you're frightened, when you're thinking about how other people think of you, when you're afraid of how other people judge you, you want to become perfect. You want to become perfect not in your eyes only, but in your audience's eyes as well. So right now when I'm speaking, I actually wanted to become very smooth. I wanted to become perfect. I want everyone to have their attentions upon me, right? To lay their eyes upon me. But sometimes it might not go your way. And really, let's go to the next slide as well. Right. And really, when you're speaking, when you're giving out your speech, your worst speech or your worst debate even is so much more better than the speech or debate that you will never even give. So stop thinking about, maybe I will pass on this opportunity. Take up that opportunity and embrace the fear. Just try to improve yourself when you're on stage. There's a skill called as improvisation, which you should master as well. It is when you don't really know what to say on stage, but then it just flows as well. Just like how your brain thinks, basically. This makes people less authentic and more artificial. What does this mean, basically? It turns people into corporate robots, that when they're on stage, it doesn't feel like I'm talking to you anymore. It kind of feels like I'm talking to myself, like I'm schizophrenic all of a sudden. Because then I'm talking about something that only I understand and the audience doesn't. It creates an invisible barrier between me and the audience, and that makes it so that we're disconnected from the audience. So obviously, it makes us like a corporate robot. It makes us sound like artificial intelligence, right? It makes us sound very robotic and it doesn't flow right, basically. It doesn't sound right in the human ear, right? So this is how it leads to the disconnection from the audience, which is the last thing which we want, which leads to the fear of speech or public speaking. So next slide, please. All right, the disconnection from the audience. Obviously, you could see over here, I found a few comments in Instagram or TikTok. I'm not sure, I forgot from which one. You could ignore the one at the very top, actually. Please don't look at that one. But anyways, over here, you could see a lot of people kind of like making fun of people for posting something online, making themselves look weird, making themselves like a clown. That's the same thing, basically, which is happening when I'm on stage right now. I could see every single one of you in here, you know, the beautiful faces, handsome faces in here. All of you, they're basically showing all of these emoticons, right? I could see like the way you express your feelings towards me, those are reflected by how you see me as well, by how you perceive me as well. So I could see some people in here with the laughing emoticon, some people maybe in the back with the sleeping emoji on their faces, anyways. So you've got a very diverse audience basically when you're on stage, right? But you've got the spotlight. So when you've got the spotlight, you've actually got control over your audience. You could control their emotions, you could make them all laugh. You could make them all do something all at once just by a single word. Like I mean, if I say that, then you probably want to prove me wrong right now, right? So I can't do that actually. But just now, let's say, when I wanted someone to come up on stage, then they actually did come up on stage. When I wanted someone to ask me, then they actually did ask me a question, right? When I wanted you guys to see up there and laugh, you actually did that. So that's actually how it works. It's a psychological way of affecting your audience by grasping their attention and controlling their minds as well. Right, anyways, it might sound a bit condescending, but let's move on to the next slide. Your audience couldn't care less unless you give them a reason to care. You do this by placing a sense of agency upon the audience, by placing a sense of urgency upon the audience, that what I'm speaking today is very important, and we're all today for the same reason. To see me, obviously, in my very nice costume, with my handsome face, that you want to take a picture with me after this. Anyways, it's not about that. It's about learning how to give and deliver a good public speech as well. How to deliver a good debate, a solid argument. Now, when you're talking about debate, I'd just like to go a bit off topic again. When you're talking about debate, you shouldn't be afraid to be swayed or to be moved by a good arguer. You should be afraid to be swayed by a good argument. And that's what I mean is by presenting an argument. If you're the arguer, you must present your argument in such a way that it is flawless, that there are no holes, basically, that there are no way to rebut it anymore. So how do we do that? Next slide, please. Not next slide, sorry. Yeah. Data and statistics informs the mind, but stories transform the heart. I will go more in depth about this, but later on you'll see. Later on you'll see about what does this mean. Data and statistics, they inform the mind, but stories transform the heart. Did you know that every single year, per annum, 126 million people in this world loses their lives in road accidents. 30% of those are accounted for speeding. I'm not seeing any emotions. You don't feel emotionally moved. I mean, 126 people loses their life. Every single 126 million people loses their lives, and you guys are not seeing. You guys are not showing any emotions or any sort of emotions in front of me. I think that kind of proves. That kind of goes to show that those data and statistics means nothing to you. And when another person dies, basically, they're just another number in such a large pile of data and statistics. Now, let me tell you a story. I used to have a friend in middle school. He wanted to become an athlete. He's really good in basketball. He's really good playing basketball. He wanted to become an athlete. He's the only son of two lovely parents, actually. And they put all of their hopes, these parents, they put all of their hope onto their only son, which wants to be an athlete. He had a dream. He had a plan light ahead of him, a whole future. He told me once, when I was talking to him one-on-one, he told me about his dreams in the future, about even the type of girl he wants to marry, even the position he wants to play in basketball. I mean, he's not that tall, but he wants to become a basketballer, right? He wants to be a baller, and he's really good at playing it. But one day I received a message from my friend that he got into an accident. And when I called him, he's not there anymore. He didn't even pick up my phone. He ignored me because he passed away. His entire future, he has an entire future light ahead of him. His parents' only hope and dream was with him, and he died along with it. So now you feel he passed away. Oh, sorry, he passed away because of speeding, right? Motorcycle accident, and that kind of moves the heart as well. That's what I mean by the data and statistics only informing the mind, but stories transforming the heart. So let's move on to the next slide. Those are the three things which leads to glossophobia. I would like to explain further on how to actually ace it now, how to actually overcome your fear, how to step over it. And that I do by using the 3C formula. So maybe if we could go to the next slide about the C3 formula. All right, the 3 pillars of the C3 formula. I'm pretty sure some of you in here might have heard about this. Confidence, clarity, and connection. Those are the 3 things that you should pay attention to when you're speaking in front of a large audience or medium-sized audience, let's say. So we could move on to the next slide again. Let's talk about confidence first. Right, confidence. You basically speak with belief in yourself and the message that you deliver. You do this by actually taking a lot of research, taking it all in and understanding what you're going to present, right? You do this exactly by your research that you did the night before, basically, the rehearsals that you've done before your presentation or before your public speaking, right? Now, here are my 5 cents. Here are my 5 cents and how to actually ace it. Firstly, you must understand the content well. This is, I think, the most basic thing. It's like laying the foundation of your public speaking, right? Laying the foundation of your debate. You must truly understand what you want to say, when you want to say it, and where you want to say it. So by doing so, you must do a lot of research as well, obviously, the night before. It's like laying the foundation, like laying the cement foundation, basically, to your own public speaking, right? Without that, then you're not going to have a solid public speaking. So it's very important to do research. It's very important to actually put a bit of effort into your public speaking. You can't just say that, hey, maybe I'm going to go on stage, 1 or 2 practices is enough, and then I could probably ace it on stage, right? That's impossible. But the second thing to note is to practice and rehearse in private. A lot of people ignore this step, actually, even myself included. But here's the thing. Sometimes it's all right. I'm not asking you to practice 5, 6, 7 times before your public speaking. Quite frankly, I've only practiced once before I came up on stage. When you find yourself in that position that, hey, maybe I should have practiced more before I came up on stage. Maybe I should have practiced more before this debate. Maybe I should have practiced more when I had the time to before I come up on this stage and gave up my public speaking in front of so many people over here, right? When you find yourself in a similar situation like this, keep calm. You can't change the past, but you only can change what's in the future, right? So you just focus on what you should do right now. And it kind of like your adrenaline, basically, your dopamine, it takes over your mind. So what you want to do is to stay calm and use it to your advantage, to use it so that you speak with confidence, even if you have practiced just once or twice. People don't know how many times you practice. That's the truth. The third thing to note is to stand tall with an open posture. When you want to stand tall with an open posture, not just so you could look like 1 or 2 centimeters even taller, right? I mean, that doesn't even make sense because you don't even know how tall I am. So when you want to speak, you want to kind of find like a proper posture, like you want to speak up clearly, right? The way you speak up, the way you bring yourself on stage, it kind of shows confidence as well. If I slouch myself like this, then I don't feel confident at all in myself. But when I try to speak up like this, then my voice changes. All of a sudden, the way you perceive me, the way you judge me, the way you see me, it all changes as well, right? So the way you bring yourself on stage, it really reflects who you are. A lot of people like to do this when they're public speaking or debating. They like to step back, right? They like to step back. It kind of shows that they're nervous, that they're anxious, that they're frightened about something. So like, let's say a lot of people, they come up on stage, they want to introduce themselves, and then they say, hello, nama ko Phanuel Ebenezer Rodizeng. It doesn't make sense, You have to stay in front of the stage. You have to stay where you're closer to the audience so that this barrier, this invisible barrier, you practically can't even feel it anymore. Even if you can't see it, you can't feel it. So that's the third thing to note. The fourth thing to note is to speak with a steady voice. Now, I'm very sure that all of you in here knows that we have a voice box, right? A larynx, basically. And I don't want to go too deep dialogically into this, but you could actually control, and I'm very sure, as I've mentioned before, the human voice is the single most powerful instrument and tool that we all could play, right? So the way we actually control our voice box or the larynx, right? If I want to speak a bit lower, then I could speak a bit lower, right? But I don't think so. It's quite good to speak with a voice like this. So I try to find like a better pitch. So I go a bit higher, right? And I kind of like train this a lot, like let's say. And it's very important to actually find your own voice within yourself. So when you're alone, let's say, when you're in the bathroom, when you're trying to practice on your own, finding your own voice within you, trust me, somewhere there in your voice book, there's a very sexy voice located, but I can't even find it yet. But just saying, you have to figure out where is that located in your voice box. So that's the fourth thing to note. And the last thing to note is to not rush, to keep your composure under pressure. Maybe I might sound a bit rushing because, yes, I must say, I'm frankly quite anxious. But it is better to actually take a pause, let's say, than to fill it up with filler words like ahs and ums, likes, basically, those kind of things. Try to avoid them. So we're going to talk about that later on. Let's move on to the next slide now. Clarity. It's to speak in such a way that it's easy to understand and simple enough for other people to grasp. Now, how do you do this? You use simple and focused language, basically. Try to minimize the uses of hard synonyms. Synonyms which lots of people might not even know yet to start with, right? Because a lot of people actually like to do this. They bring up their speech and they speak with a lot of hard English words, let's say, hard for me to perceive, even for a native English speaker. They just want to sound smart. They just want to sound a bit more, maybe if you could relate with this a bit, it kind of makes sense already. Anyways, second thing to note is to structure with a logical flow. You must follow the introduction, body, and conclusion way if it's in a public speaking. If it's a debate, it's a whole different thing. But in a public speaking, follow the introduction, body, and conclusion structure in order for your brain to actually understand what to say, when to say it, and where to say it, right? So when I want to introduce myself, I don't bring it too long. I don't keep it too draggy. When I want to introduce a topic, I don't keep it too long as well. But when I want to come to the body, now that's where I go in depth. That's when I say, that's the time for me to explain a lot, and just a lot, And then in the end is the conclusion, where basically you conclude it in such a simple way that other people could understand it. So that's the second thing to note. The third thing to note is to avoid excessive fillers, which I've said just now. To avoid those ahs and ums, likes, in your speech, basically. And the fourth thing to note is to use easy to grasp examples. When the example is a bit too niche, when the example is hard for other people to understand or relate to, then it's hard to understand actually what's going on in your speech. It kind of creates this invisible barrier to come back again. And basically, it puts us in different pedestals, right? Like we're both from different worlds. The last thing to note is to use the Feynman technique. If you've not heard about the Feynman technique, actually, it's a way to explain information, to explain towards other people, things which could be a bit harder for the normal average person to grasp onto, but it's easy for a 5-year-old to understand when you explain in such a way that it is simple and easy to understand for them, right? So that's the Feynman technique, basically. It's like explaining a hard topic to a 5-year-old. So let's move on to the next slide. This is the very last one, promise me. Connection. People may forget what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel. This is very often, I mean, we do this a lot, let's say. A lot of breakups happen because of this. A lot of fights happen because of this. You know, you're in a brawl with your parents, let's say, or you're in a brawl with your girlfriend, you know, and all of a sudden you kind of just break up, or like you just say that you don't want to talk anymore and you just block them. Then the next week you want to talk back, you want to talk again, you want to connect with them again, you want to reconcile with them again. But you kind of forgot, why did you even fight in the first place to start with, you know? That's basically what I mean by people may forget what you said, but not how you make them feel. So when I'm talking in front of a large audience like this, sometimes you might forget what I might say, you know. I'm going to be very impressed if today, this time, tomorrow, you still remember these 3 points. I'd be very impressed. But I'm very sure that the moment you get out of this room, I will leave a lasting impression on you. That's the feeling that you go out to this room with sometimes. Here are my 5 cents first. Firstly, you must engage with the audience in order to have this sort of connection with them. You must establish this sense of connection with them first. That, hey, I'm also human. I'm not a robot speaking in front of all of you, right? That I also have feeling, that I'm also a deeply emotional being, right? That I could make jokes, let's say. The second thing to note is to express genuine emotion and use more storytelling over data. I've mentioned this before. We humans are deeply emotional beings. And regardless, some people might be swayed by data and statistics, but in most of the cases, most people are swayed more by storytelling. Those emotions which touch the heart, because deep down, even for a stoic person, you know, a person with a stoic nature, they have a soft spot, and you must know how to hit that soft spot in your audience. The third thing to note is to adapt to your listeners. Right now, I am sensing a bit of, you know, boredom, a bit of, some of you might be feeling a bit tired. I understand, it's been a very long day, right? But when you're talking to a lot of people like this, they also have feelings. You want them to still have your attention, right? You still want their attention upon you. You still want a spotlight. You still want them to see you and listen to you, right? Because you have something to say. You still have a lot of things to say. Now, a lot of speakers, they kind of tend to do this. I would say me, myself included, but I'm trying not to. Anyways, they like to start their speech with a lot of hype at first, you know, it just kind of like spikes up when they come up on stage. Then it kind of like goes down and it sounds a bit boring to the end. And then no one kind of remembers anymore what they're saying at all. So, what I mean by that is you must adapt to your listeners. When it's starting to become a bit boring and a bit tiring, you know, then you must stop for a while, pause it, and then grasp the audience attention first, right? So far, are there any questions actually? No? All right then, let's move on. Now, the fourth thing to note is, oh, sorry. Back one slide, yeah. The fourth thing to note is to speak from the heart. When you speak from the heart, you actually speak with confidence because then you believe in it. Then your heart actually believes in it. Then your moral compass is actually pointing north towards what you believe, right? And the last thing to note is that authenticity beats perfection. So never try to aim to be perfect, you know. Try to aim to become real in front of the audience. Try to aim to become authentic. Sometimes when you show vulnerability, let's say, when I tell you that I'm anxious, that I'm feeling a bit frightened, nervous right now, although I'm not showing it, that I have cold, sweaty palms right now, it makes me feel human, you know? And that's what I mean by authenticity beating perfection. Now, let's talk about the 7 deadly sins of public speaking. Maybe some of you in here might have heard about the 7 deadly sins of this and that, you know, but here are the 7 deadly sins of public speaking. A lot of things to note in here, I understand, but just stay and hang on with me. This is a lot of information for you to process, but I'm very sure the judges out there, they're also making their own decisions. So let's make use of this time together, right? The first thing to note is clutter. What is clutter? Move, next slide, please. Clutter. Next slide. Right, clutter. This is what I call by clutter. Clutter is basically the overloading of lots of informations in one slide. So it makes it hard for you to actually understand. Even I have OCD actually, so it's kind of, seeing the last bit of sentence down there, it kind of like pulls a bit of, it triggers me a bit, you know? But anyways, this is what a cluttered presentation looks like. Do you understand what is going on? Are you focusing on me? Are you listening to me? Or are you trying to decipher this thing behind me? It looks very embarrassing. Not just embarrassing. It looks very disgusting to look at actually. It's very confusing. So let's move on to the next slide. Here's how you show a very good slide actually. I wouldn't say very good, but this is what I mean by an uncluttered presentation, which also still grasps the viewers as well, right? Behind me is a picture of one of my favorite basketballers, Jimmy Butler. I'm pretty sure you know this meme. It's all over on Instagram right now. But anyways, here is what you should do. Back slide. Yeah. All right. Here's what you should do with presentation, basically. Try to structure a presentation in such a way that it isn't cluttered. So you could take a picture first because we're actually losing a bit of time anyways. But the main point is that you should only have one idea per slide. So on this slide, it's basically just about clutter. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's speed this thing up a bit, all right? Monotone. It is when you basically speak with a very slow, passive voice, you know, no emotions at all, no changes in pitches or volume. And the thing that you must note, obviously, is that emotion and energy bring your words to life. So try not to use a flat voice or a flat tone. Let's move on to the next slide. Third deadly sin. It's rambling. When a lot of people actually does this when they're feeling anxious or nervous, they start to talk about things which kind of gets out of the topic itself, you know, kind of get out of hand, basically. Now, you must know your point and stick to it, and that's how you avoid rambling, basically. Because rambling in and of itself, it means that you're speaking about something which is going off topic already, right? So let's keep on topic. What's the next thing? The fourth deadly sin. It is being verbatim. If you see this picture behind me, it's actually how I started debate. My handwriting is absolutely horrible. You can't even decipher what it is, right? But that's what I call it by being verbatim. I used to do this a lot when I was in debate. I used to write everything on a piece of paper for that 15 minute I have, 30 minute I have. I write down everything, you know, 1,500 words even. And then I read it out. Somehow I'm able to read all of this anyways. But you have to try not to become verbatim. And the fifth deadly sin right now is fillers. Because silence is always better than a filler. When you're feeling that, hey, maybe I'm going a bit too quick right now, and I'm starting to use a lot of fillers, I'm starting to become more nervous, anxious, I'm starting to add these fillers in, take a pause, take a break, and just leave it to the silence first, to the audience, you know? Let them have time to process information in not just their brain, but your brain as well. Next deadly sin. Disengagement. So, this is what you should actually take note to. Public speaking is not about yourself, it's about serving your audience by actually delivering their information towards them, right? So when you're forgetting that very important point, that public speaking is not about yourself, you know, you start to think about only you, and you again, like me, and me again, you know, and kind of like disengages yourself from the audience, like we're living in different separate worlds. Next slide, this is the last one. The overuse of jargons. Jargons, they're basically like advanced technical terminologies, right? Like when I'm saying the Feynman technique, but I'm not explaining what it is, that's a jargon, an overuse of jargon, right? Now, you must always try to keep your speech very easy for the audience to understand. When you use too much jargons, you sound a bit cold, a bit confusing, arrogant, or even elitist even. It makes it so that you want the audience to think that you are smarter than them. That's not how it should be. We are equal in this room. And that's when you must realize that public speaking is not about you. It's about the information that you deliver towards them. And when you walk out of this room, you walk out with the equal information that you have once in the beginning. Next slide, please. Those were the 7 deadly sins. Now let's wrap it up. What makes a great speaker? I think it's better for me to just explain it than ask a question, actually, so you guys could actually understand. This is the conclusion slide. So the 3 things that you should note now from the C3, basically, is that you must always be confident when you deliver a public speaking, right? When you deliver a speech in front of a large audience, let's say, you must always remember that you should believe in what you say, in what you mean, and in yourself as well. Second thing to note, keep it simple, right? Always make it very, very clear and concise for the audience to understand as well. Pay attention to the clarity. And the third thing to note is connection. The speaking, when you're speaking, basically, you're not just, you know, talking about yourself, talking to a large audience. Try to say it as though you're talking to a friend, you know. And the last thing to note over here is to avoid the use of the 7 deadly sins of public speaking, which I've mentioned before, right? Always keep it focused and keep it human. So don't try to be perfect. Try to be human. Try to be real. Try to be authentic. Because authenticity always beats perfection. Next slide, please. And I think we're actually losing time in here. So let's wrap it up. since we finished all those things, I hope that you could understand, I hope you could really understand, process this information, and implement it to your daily lives as well. So are there any questions or answers before we close this? Sure, from the right. That's actually a very solid question. I really love that question. Let's give a round of applause first before I answer it, because I still have time to think. Anyways, the way you regulate your emotions when you're delivering your speech, that's actually very important. That's why I really love this question. It's about when you have external issues, let's say, how do you actually deliver your speech but still keeping it neutral, you know, that people don't actually see the problems behind you from the way you see, them, from the way you deliver your speech. Maybe you have some sort of love problem or like a family issue out there. How do you actually regulate these emotions? How do you keep it in and not transfer it to what you actually want to say, right? A lot of people, maybe you see this in courtroom issues. Like I think there was an issue in Malaysia back then, you know, I'm very sure some of you might pick up that reference as well. When, I forgot who was the name of this person, but he was part of the Malaysian parliamentary. Actually happens in DPR as well. But in Malaysian parliamentary, this happens quite often anyways. They tend to lash out a lot. They tend to bring their emotions into their speeches as well. How do you regulate these emotions and how do you keep it away and separate it from the public speaking? In and of itself, that's the answer. You separate yourself from the external world. When you're in a public speaking, when you're in a courtroom, you focus on the issues which are in that room. You focus on the issues which are presented to you on stage. You don't focus about what's going on outside. I don't focus about how maybe my girlfriend isn't watching me, how maybe my brother isn't here with me, you know? I try to focus on the audience, which is with me in this room, so that I could actually serve them properly and that they could actually understand every bit of information that I tell them without mixing it up with my emotions. So you separate yourself from the outside world with the inside of this room, basically. I hope you understand that question. Are there any other questions or answers?
Well, unfortunately, because of the time, we only accept one question, but it was amazing, Phanuel. Thank you.
All right. All right, so let's skip this slide real quick in the end. All right. This is why your voice matters, basically. Public speaking is a skill. Anyone can learn it, and not just learn it, but master it as well. Don't aim to be perfect. Aim to be real, once again. And embrace your anxiety. Overcome your fears of public speaking, basically. And in the end, the more you practice, the better you get. So let's move on to the last slide. Right, I so look forward to your speaking up without freaking out. Thank you so much. My name is Phanuel Ebenezer Rodizeng, and have a very great evening, guys. Thank you.